Rams fans, there are some serious questions developing behind the scenes in Los Angeles, and depending on how this plays out, it could completely change the way we look at this Rams defense heading into the season. There's a lot of excitement, but there's also a little bit of uncertainty, because some of the biggest decisions might not happen on the timeline we expect. That's exactly why I wanted to talk to you guys about this today, because Rams House Daily is all about breaking down what's really happening with this team and what it means for us as fans. If you're new here, I'm Jake, and if you're a real Rams fan who believes this team can make a serious run and bring another Super Bowl back to Los Angeles, hit that like button and subscribe. We're still building this channel from the ground up, and our first goal is 900 subscribers. So if you believe in this team and you want to be part of the Rams House Daily family from the beginning, I'd love to have you here. Because Rams fans, this one could get really interesting. Aaron Donald has now been retired for 2 years, but somehow we are sitting here talking about the possibility of seeing one of the greatest defensive players in NFL history put on a Rams uniform again. And the crazy part is, Sean McVay is not putting pressure on him to make a decision. McVay has made it very clear that there is no hidden deadline hanging over Aaron Donald. He wants Donald to go through his own process, see how his body responds, and decide for himself whether he actually wants to come back. And honestly, I think that is the right approach. This is Aaron Donald we're talking about. The man has been to 10 Pro Bowls. He built a Hall of Fame career with the Rams. He won 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards, and he retired after the 2023 season as one of the most dominant defensive players we have ever seen. So if Aaron Donald needs time to figure out whether his body is ready for another NFL season, Sean McVay is basically saying, take your time. And according to Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk, that could mean we are waiting much longer than some fans expect. The important thing here is that the NFL does have a real deadline for activating a player from the retired list, and that deadline is the Tuesday following Week 13. So technically, Aaron Donald could wait until deep into the season before making this decision. Think about that for a second. We could potentially start the season without Aaron Donald, watch the Rams play for several weeks, and then, if the situation is right, suddenly have Aaron Donald walking into the building ready to help this defense. And Florio believes there is actually a strategic reason why Donald might prefer that kind of timeline. First, there is the physical side. Aaron Donald has not gone through a normal NFL training camp. He has only participated in 2 official workouts with the Rams, which is obviously nowhere near the workload of an entire training camp and preseason, and that matters. You cannot just disappear from football for 2 years and expect your body to immediately handle the violence and conditioning required to play defensive tackle in the NFL. But what if Donald doesn't have to? What if he lets everybody else go through the punishment of training camp, preseason, and the first several weeks of the regular season, while he continues preparing on his own? Then maybe, somewhere around Week 10, when defensive lines across the league are exhausted, when players are dealing with injuries, and when everybody's body is starting to break down, Aaron Donald could look at the Rams and say, I'm ready. That is basically the scenario Florio is talking about. Imagine being an offensive coordinator in the middle of the season, already dealing with Myles Garrett on the outside, and then suddenly finding out that Aaron Donald is coming back. That would be terrifying. But there is another issue here, and it is a big one: money. If Aaron Donald returns, he is reportedly expected to make $30 million, and it is very likely the Rams would want to renegotiate that number. So this isn't simply about whether Aaron Donald wants to play football again. There is a financial conversation that has to happen too. And from the Rams' perspective, you have to ask yourself how much money you want to commit to a 35-year-old defensive tackle who has been away from the game for 2 years. At the same time, we're talking about Aaron freaking Donald. If he's healthy and genuinely believes he can still make an impact, I don't think you can simply dismiss that possibility. The biggest question may actually be what happens if the Rams start the season poorly. Florio suggested that if Los Angeles is sitting around 5-6 in the middle of the season, Donald could decide there is no reason to come back at all, and that makes sense. Why return from retirement if the team isn't in position to seriously compete? Aaron Donald doesn't need another season just to add games to his resume. He already has the resume. If he comes back, I believe the goal would have to be winning. And there is a fascinating piece of Rams history here. Remember 2021. The Rams convinced Eric Weddle to come out of retirement late in the season, and Weddle ended up helping the team during its playoff run. And we all know how that story ended. The Rams won the Super Bowl. So there is already a precedent inside this organization for bringing a retired veteran back when the team believes it has a legitimate championship opportunity. And that's why I don't think we should completely rule out Aaron Donald waiting. He has no reason to rush. Sean McVay isn't forcing him to rush, and the NFL's rules give him plenty of time. The Rams can keep that door open, and Donald can keep deciding whether he wants to walk through it. But while we're talking about the Rams' defensive line, there is another name that has suddenly entered this entire conversation, and this one could completely change the equation. Vita Vea. According to ESPN's Adam Schefter, Vita Vea has requested a trade from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers after contract extension discussions failed to produce a long-term deal. And this is where things get really interesting for the Rams, because according to The Athletic, the 31-year-old defensive tackle has a preference for a California team or the Las Vegas Raiders. And whenever a star defensive lineman becomes available and apparently wants to stay in California, you already know the Rams are going to be connected to the rumors. The Rams are always looking for that next aggressive move. And after what they did earlier this offseason with Myles Garrett, nobody should be surprised that Los Angeles is being mentioned again. Just imagine this defensive front. Myles Garrett coming off the edge, Vita Vea attacking from the middle, Kobe Turner, Braden Fisk, Poona Ford, and then potentially Aaron Donald entering the picture later in the season. Rams fans, come on, that would be absolutely ridiculous. Vita Vea weighs 347 pounds, and his ability to create disruption from the interior is exactly the type of thing that could make this defense even more dangerous. In 2025, Vea recorded 4.5 sacks and 13 quarterback pressures. But his value isn't only about his own statistics. This is the part that I think Rams fans should really pay attention to. A player like Vita Vea can force offensive lines to commit extra attention inside. He can absorb double teams, he can occupy blockers, and when that happens, suddenly guys like Kobe Turner and Braden Fisk can get cleaner opportunities. Suddenly Poona Ford can attack. Suddenly the edge rushers have more one-on-one situations, and when the edge rusher you're talking about is Myles Garrett, that becomes a serious problem for opposing offenses. But obviously, there is one massive problem: the salary cap. Vita Vea is scheduled to make $18 million in the final year of his contract, with $17 million in base salary and another $1 million in a roster bonus. The Rams currently have around $15.27 million in cap space. And because Vea would effectively replace a contract worth roughly $1.08 million in the top 51 calculation, the effective cost of adding him would be around $16.93 million. That means Los Angeles would need to find a little more than $1.6 million just to make the transaction work. And honestly, the Rams shouldn't want to operate with almost no flexibility. You need room for injuries. You need room for emergency moves. You need room for the unexpected things that happen throughout an NFL season, so the Rams would probably need to create additional cap space. And the most obvious solution could be a contract extension for Vita Vea. The Rams could potentially convert part of his salary into a signing bonus, spreading the cap impact over future seasons instead of taking the entire hit immediately. And that could also help solve the contract issue that caused Vea to request a trade from Tampa Bay in the first place. But here's where Aaron Donald comes back into the conversation, because the Rams can't just look at Vita Vea in isolation. They have to ask themselves, how much money do we really want invested in defensive tackles? You already have Poona Ford. You already have Kobe Turner. You already have Braden Fisk. And then there is Aaron Donald potentially waiting in the background. So if Donald comes back, does it make sense to spend $18 million on Vita Vea too? That's the real question. Because as incredible as it sounds to put Vea, Donald, and Garrett on the same defense, the Rams still have to build an entire roster. You need money for the offense. You need depth. You need to protect against injuries. And eventually, you need to think about the future contracts for the young players you're developing right now. So this isn't just about asking, would Vita Vea make the Rams better? Obviously, yes. The real question is whether the improvement is worth the financial commitment and what it does to the rest of the roster. And there is another layer to this that makes the situation even more fascinating. The Rams don't necessarily have to choose today. Aaron Donald can continue his process, Vita Vea can remain on the trade market, and Los Angeles can continue monitoring both situations. But if Donald eventually tells Sean McVay, "I'm coming back," that could change everything. Because if Aaron Donald returns, I think the window for a Vita V trade probably becomes much smaller. You wouldn't want to invest that kind of money in another 31-year-old interior defensive lineman when you've already brought back a future Hall of Famer and have Turner, Fisk, and Ford on the roster. But if Donald decides he is staying retired, then suddenly Vita Vea becomes a much more interesting possibility. And that's why I think Rams fans need to watch both stories together. These aren't two completely separate rumors anymore. They could actually be connected. The Rams have already shown that they are willing to make massive moves when they believe they are close to something special. The Myles Garrett trade changed the entire perception of this defense. And now we're talking about the possibility of adding Vita V while Aaron Donald is potentially considering a comeback. That's not normal. That's a team telling the league that it believes its championship window is open right now. But as exciting as all of this sounds, I don't want to get carried away. Aaron Donald is still deciding whether he wants to return. Vita Vea has requested a trade, but that doesn't mean the Rams are automatically getting him, and the salary cap still exists. Those are the facts. What we can say is that Los Angeles is sitting in a fascinating position. If Donald returns, the Rams could have one of the most terrifying defensive fronts in football. If Donald stays retired, the Rams could potentially explore the market for another interior force like Vita Vea. And if somehow both things happen, Rams fans, I don't even know what to tell you. Myles Garrett and Aaron Donald on the same defensive line would already be insane. Add Vita Vea to that. Offensive coordinators around the league might start calling in sick, but this is exactly why the next few weeks are going to be so important. Sean McVay has been patient with Aaron Donald, and he has made it clear that Donald has earned the right to make this decision on his own terms. At the same time, the Rams have to keep an eye on the trade market and their salary cap situation. This is what happens when you're trying to build a championship roster. Every move affects another move. Every dollar matters. And every decision about the defensive line could ultimately determine what this team looks like when the games actually count. For me, the biggest thing is this. The Rams aren't sitting around hoping something happens. They're positioning themselves. They went and got Myles Garrett. They have young defensive talent in Kobe Turner and Braden Fisk. They have Poona Ford. They are keeping the door open for Aaron Donald. And now, with Vita Vea potentially available, they're at least being mentioned in another major defensive line conversation. That tells me everything about the mentality inside this organization. This is not a team thinking about rebuilding. This is a team thinking about winning now. And as Rams fans, that's exactly what we wanted to see. Now, the pressure is on. Because when you make these kinds of moves, expectations go up. Nobody is going to be satisfied with simply making the playoffs. Nobody is going to look at a defensive front like this and say, well, at least we had a good season. The goal has to be the Super Bowl. And if Aaron Donald decides to come back, if Myles Garrett continues to be the force we expect him to be, and if the young guys take another step forward, this defense could become something really special. But for now, we wait. Aaron Donald has the decision in his hands. Vita V is waiting to see where his future takes him. And the Rams are sitting right in the middle of both stories. Honestly, Rams fans, I love this. I love having a team that is willing to think big. I love having a front office that isn't afraid to swing. And I love the fact that we're sitting here in August talking about the possibility of adding even more firepower to a defense that already has Myles Garrett. Now we just have to see how far this thing actually goes. And I want to hear from you guys, because this is one of those situations where Rams fans are going to have very different opinions. If Aaron Donald comes back, do you want the Rams to go Elin and try to add Vita Vea to? Or would you rather keep the money, trust Kobe Turner, Braden Fisk, and Poona Ford, and save that flexibility for later? And if you had to choose only one, would you rather have Aaron Donald back or trade for Vita Vea? Let me know in the comments, because I genuinely want to know where Rams House Daily stands on this. And if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. Seriously, it helps the channel more than you might think. We're still a brand new channel here at Rams House Daily, and we're trying to build this community from the ground up. Our first goal is 900 subscribers, so if you're a real Rams fan, if you believe in this team, and if you still believe we can bring another Lombardi trophy back to Los Angeles, subscribe and join us. Let's build Rams House Daily together. Because when this team makes that run, I want to know that we were here from the beginning. Let's go Rams!